Hello, you lovely people. It's the drinker here, and this is my little catch-up from the awesome chat that I had with Thomas F. Wilson the other night. Obviously, you guys sent me through loads of super chats. You had lots of questions for Tom, and we got through as many of them as we could on the night, but I could only monopolize the guy's time for so long, so unfortunately we couldn't answer all of them there and then. So I'm doing a catch-up stream for this. I'm going to do my best to answer them as best I can. Obviously, if they're direct questions for him, there's not too much I can do, but I do appreciate you guys sending through all those supers on the night. So I'll do my best anyway with what we have here. Never let it be said that the drinker leaves a super chat unanswered. So here we go. Anyway, the first one that we've got from Craig the Bad Guy says, "Welcome to the Salty Spittoon Drinker. How tough are you?" Not as tough as Tom, sadly, or Biff Tannen, but, I do my best. PNTR92 says, question for Tom. Having done voice acting in your career, what are some of your favorite roles that you've voiced for? Unfortunately, obviously, with Tom not being here, I can only surmise from this one. I mean, he's done a whole bunch of, voiceover work in his time. He's done loads on SpongeBob SquarePants for some weird reason, but I don't know. I guess it must be a good gig for him. A lot of people seem to know him as Mad Dog from his roles in, or is it Maniac? Sorry, from his role in Wing Commander, which is, I think that's a great little thing. Having done that, especially back in the mid '90s when live action cutscenes in video games were still pretty rare. Pretty neat that they got guys like him and Mark Hamill in to do it. So awesome stuff. But yeah, that was my waffling answer to say I don't know what he would have said. Anyway, next one is 45 Jackie says, "Hey Thomas, you and I have the same name, except that my middle initial is M." Well, there you go. Very cool. And Jay Chain says, "Cheers, Tom. Wife and I saw you at Zany's years ago. Had a great time and laughed so much that I bought your CD that night." Very cool. I mean, I didn't know until relatively recently when I saw like the questions song that he'd done that Tom had done stand-up, which is really cool. I mean, he obviously has a bit of a flair for comedy. You saw some of that in Back to the Future, but apparently he's a really good stand-up act as well, which is just awesome. Fortune and Glory says, "Biff was my favorite movie villain growing up. I'm also a big fan of the comedy show that you do. I saw you live in 2015. Do you still do tours?" Excuse me, keep coming to clear my throat here. This a little bit of vodka will help. Yeah, as far as I understand it, I don't think Tom does tours anymore for a stand-up, but he does make the occasional convention appearance. So particularly this year, because it's like the 40th anniversary of the movie coming out, I imagine there'll be a bit more of a busier schedule for him, which is neat, particularly when you've got guys like Christopher Lloyd, who are pretty old at this point, guys like Michael J. Fox, who sadly, doesn't keep that well anymore. I think we really need to make the most of these opportunities while we still have them to see these guys all appear together. So, hopefully they can do something special this year and, mark the anniversary appropriately. I'm sure they've got stuff planned. David Gannon says, "At 6'2" myself, I always say being tall has advantages. Sitting in the back seat of a Geostorm is not one of them, and I speak from experience." I feel your pain on that one, man. It's flying economy on airlines, man. Particularly if you're on a budget airline, like those seats are small, and it's impossible to ever get properly comfortable. And so if it's a long flight, man, you do start to feel it after a couple of hours. And that's just the cross you've got to bear as a tall person, sadly. But hey, it's balanced out by the fact that you can look down on the rest of humanity and laugh at those puny humans. I did totally get his point as well about the DeLorean just being a very cramped car. I noticed it when I was at, I think it was MegaCon, not this year, but the year before. They had a DeLorean there, and you could pay like $20 or something and go sit in it and get your pictures taken and all that stuff. And so I got to sit in it, and my first thought was, one, damn, this thing's low to the ground, and 2, it is really like short inside. Like your knees are bunched up even when you're trying to get in behind the wheel. So it is not a comfortable car to sit in. So I can totally imagine how difficult it was to film that on the day. Excuse me. Casey Boyd says, Tom, what do you think about a Back to the Future reboot for modern audiences? We did talk about this a little bit on the night, I think his take is much the same as mine, in that I hope that it never happens. There ain't no way they're ever going to do a good reboot of something like Back to the Future, and they'll certainly never surpass the original. I mean, those movies were essentially perfect. So, yeah, I hope it never, ever happens. Red Forest says, Thomas F. Wilson is a legend. My kids know him as Flats the Flounder. They used to run around the house telling me that they were going to kick my butt. Excellent. That's exactly what you want from your kids. No, that's cool, man. And he was an absolute gent to speak to. Really nice guy, and super generous with his time. So, I appreciate him taking the time to come on to this little corner of the internet and have a chat. Hikira says, Biff was the best. Most fun character in the trilogy. We got middle-aged Biff, young Biff, old Biff, rich Biff, and Western Biff. You were glorious. He was, indeed. As I said to him on the night, he played so many different versions of the same character, and also, completely different characters that just, came from different eras that he still inhabited. What I love about the Back to the Future trilogy is, man, the genes are strong in those families. Like, Marty's son looks exactly like Marty. And weirdly, his daughter does as well. Like, seeing Michael J. Fox in like full girl makeup is so weird, but he actually almost pulls it off. It's kind of funny. Yeah, and it's the same with like the McFlys. Like when you go back to 1885, like Seamus McFly again looks exactly like Marty. His wife looks exactly like Lorraine. It's weird how it works, but yeah, it's cool, man. And I as I said to him, as an actor, it must be great fun to play all these different variations of the characters, and you get to approach each one a little bit differently. So it's neat, I think it's cool. And yeah, I like the fact that Biff is, no matter what the era, no matter what his age, he is always pretty much an asshole to everyone that he meets. The only variation is nice middle-aged Biff in the better version of 1985. And it's debatable whether he actually is a better person now, or he's just nice to George because he's kind of scared of him. Not sure. But he does revert to being kind of an asshole in like the future when he's an old guy. So interesting. Yellow Flash. Oh yeah, we did that one on the night actually. Trash Waifu Praetorian, that's a hell of a name. Says, thank you, Mr. Wilson, for your acting and your strong Catholic faith. It inspires and helps me in my journey too. I met your daughter at a few conventions, and she's just as amazing and nice as you. Awesome. Nice one, man. Sam Wallace then says, welcome, Mr. Wilson. I liked your small part in Blood In, Blood Out as the one cop seeing the drama as an outsider. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, when I looked through his TV credits, like, man, that guy has worked. He has been in like dozens and dozens of roles over the years. It's impressive, his resume. Martin Mayer says, wow, Maniac is here. Yeah, I said Mad Dog earlier, and it's Maniac. Yeah. That was his character from Wing Commander. Maximus BT says, what are you looking at, butthead? Yeah, I'm sure he's never heard that before. I wonder if he could tally up the number of times people have said that to him. It would be impressive. Eric Just says, what was it like playing Maniac in the Wing Commander games, and what was Mark Hamill like? And if EA called, would you reprise your role as Maniac? I really hope he would, if that was the case. But yeah, as from working with Mark Hamill, according to Tom, he was a really nice guy. He seemed to like him. So I guess good on him. James Evans says, hail both. Question for Tom. When you were on set filming, did you and any of the cast know or have any idea how successful it would become? Now I'm going to make like a tree and get out of here. I think he mentioned this on the night that it was a big budget movie and so on, and they were excited to be on it. But I don't think they necessarily knew, hey, this is going to be a smash hit, and people are still going to be talking about it like 40 years later. I don't think anyone can really know that. That's something that just happens organically. But I suppose as an actor, particularly a young actor, you're always going to hope that something like that happens to you, and you're part of something truly special. So, yeah. Night King One says, I wonder if anyone is taken aback at the time at how much darker 2 was than the first Back to the Future. Do you remember your reaction to the script? It's a shame, actually. I really wish I could have asked him that, and had him on hand for this one, because that's actually a really interesting question. It obviously does get darker, and Biff, as a character, becomes, he's more than just a high school bully. He's like straight up willing to murder people now. So, like, that is next level. And yeah, it is a lot darker. The fact that George gets killed in one version of the future, like Hill Valley gets transformed into this hellscape, all because of Biff. And yeah, it would be interesting to get his take on that. But oh well, apologies for that. Some Norwegian guy says, any stories about the late great Carl Weathers from Action Jackson? That is another good question, actually. I know he had a small role in Action Jackson, and yeah, it would have been nice to hear about that, because that was kind of Carl Weathers' big shot at being a leading man, and trying to launch him as a bit of an action star. Beyond what he'd done in things like Predator and so on. Didn't quite work out, unfortunately, for him, and then he kind of moved into more TV roles and stuff in the 90s, which is kind of a shame, because I always thought Carl Weathers he absolutely had everything you needed to be a leading man in Hollywood at that time. He had the charisma, he had pretty good acting chops, obviously had the physicality to be an action star. Just never quite happened for him. That being said, being in Rocky and Predator, that's a pretty good pedigree. If most actors could only dream of being in 2 massive movies like that. So he did pretty well for his time. Ghost in the Craig says, much love and respect to Crispin. Yeah, I mean, I think the impression I got from Tom was that he came to respect Crispin Glover's instincts as an actor. It obviously didn't work out great on set with Zemeckis. I think they did clash to an extent, and Crispin definitely had some interesting ideas about what the character should be. I think he was really unhappy about George being a successful author. At the end of it, he felt like his success should be just measured in his respect for himself, rather than earning money and being financially successful. But they clashed, and they worked it out. So it is what it is. But hey, some of the stuff that we were talking about there, like Crispin's reaction to Biff, like picking on Marty instead of him, and him being happy about that, almost like he's glad that the attention's shifted to someone else. Like, Tom seemed to really pick up on that and appreciate it. So I don't know if that was in the script. I don't know if Zemeckis directed him to do that, or if that was just his own instincts as an actor. But either way, it's a pretty neat little touch. Red 4 says, make like a tree and get out of here was always how I released my soldiers at the end of the day when I was a platoon sergeant. That is a brilliant way to end the day. And I feel like they would have been motivated after that. It's pretty neat. So yeah, that's awesome, man. Casey Boyd says, 3,600 live viewers, highest number in VIP lounge. Is it, actually? No, that's pretty cool. I mean, it shows you the amount of passion that people still have for these movies, and the interest in hearing from Tom. So, no, it's great. I'm glad we could make so many people happy. Like, hope everyone who watched it, got a bit of entertainment out of the stream. I mean, I certainly loved it, man. I mean, it took a while to set up, because, he's got kind of a busy schedule, and we had to work around that. But I'm glad we could make it happen. And as a fan of Back to the Future since I was a little kid, like, being able to talk to one of the major actors from it was like a dream come true, and the fact that he was also just a really nice guy and really accommodating and really easy to talk to boot, that just made it all the better, man. So yeah, I really enjoyed that interview. I think that might be my favorite one that I've done, actually, because I've done guys like Russell Crowe as well, and talked to him, but that was very quick, and I was very much just focused on trying to get some good questions in there and just not fucking it up. Whereas with guys like Tom, I could just relax and just indulge it a little bit and indulge myself and have a bit of fun with it. And that was a way more enjoyable experience, you know? So yeah, I'm glad we got to do it. Martin Mayer says, Tom, when looking back on your role as Maniac in the Wing Commander games, how was the experience at the time? It's interesting to compare the gaming industry at that time to where it is today. I mean, very true. Obviously, you know, you can't answer that right now, but it was a very different time. And this was the time when they were just, you know, branching out into this idea that, hey, we can get actual actors in to do this. Like the technology had caught up to the point where it's not just, you know, sprites on screen. It's not just cartoony graphics. We can do full motion video. We can actually shoot this in live action as if it was a movie and then port it into the game, you know. And yeah, it's going to be super low resolution and probably not done on a huge budget, but you know, it's a start. And yeah, I like that period of gaming where, man, I've said this before, that time period from like the mid 90s to say the mid 2000s, like unless you lived through it, you have no idea how quickly and how much gaming advanced in that time. It is insane, the leaps forward in technology and graphics and presentation and maturity of games that happened in that 10-year span. Now it's kind of stagnated where we've probably reached that point of graphics being so good that you barely notice any difference from generation to generation now. And you know, they almost don't need to get any better now. It's more about like let's focus now on telling better stories and creating better gameplay experiences rather than just making them look nicer. But back then, the leaps forward were very tangible. And yeah, I kind of miss that feeling of progression that we used to have. But yeah, this was all brand new territory back then. This idea of like presenting games much more like movies. So it was quite a neat little time, I think. Borg says, we know why Claudia Wells couldn't be in the sequel, but it would have been funny to see Marty notice why Jennifer looks different because he screwed up in the space-time continuum, saying she's still hot. Yeah, I mean, obviously they had to recast the actress, and it is what it is, I suppose. But as a kid, I don't think I noticed it that much. They found a pretty good match for her, I would say. You know, to the point where you could almost let it go, particularly because there was a gap between movies. Like, there was like maybe 3-4 years from Back to the Future until Back to the Future 2. And, you know, probably back then people's memories fade a little bit. And a lot of people would have just watched it and been like, oh, okay, it's the same girl. Particularly because they reshot the ending of the first movie to accommodate the new actress and make it a little bit, you know, a little bit less jarring for the second film. So I think that definitely helped. Millen says, yeah, Back to the Future was the first video that I rented when I was 9, and my dad took me to the video club to pick a VHS and use our brand new video recorder. Argentina in 1986. No one can take that away from me. Absolutely, man, and nobody ever should try and take that away from you. Those are the kind of memories that you know you get to keep for the rest of your life, and it is awesome. Like, I think I talked about this with Tom on the night. Like, the first time I watched Back to the Future would have been with my dad. I don't know if we rented it or if it just happened to be on TV because, you know, I would have only been like 2 years old when the first movie came out, so obviously I didn't see it in movie theaters or anything, and it was probably early 90s when I watched them for the first time. So they'd obviously been out for a few years by that point, and it would have been with my dad watching it together. And yeah, it's great. It's a great little memory. There's a lot of films that I have that same recollection of like, oh yeah, I remember we used to watch that together. He introduced me to Star Trek as well. You know, I think Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, was the first one that I ever watched, and it was with him. And I was probably too young for it at the time, with all the slugs like crawling into people's ears and blood going everywhere and stuff. And it kind of freaked me out, but I loved it, and that started my appreciation for Star Trek that endures to this day, despite the sludge that they produce these days. You know. Adam Bloxham says, "Hi Tom, did you ever want to take anything from any of your roles?" I don't know if that's like, did you want to take like props or anything, or bits of like the costumes or something like that? I don't know. Like, I don't know what the deal is with actors doing stuff like that. Whether it's allowed once filming wraps, and it's like, well, that thing's not going to be needed anymore. You can take it as a souvenir, or if it's completely unauthorized and they risk getting like sued for it. But man, if you had access to the Back to the Future props, like, and all those great gadgets and stuff, like, man, I would 100% try and steal something. Rook Takes Rook says, "Glad you're here, Tom. Has Drinker heard the song that you wrote about Back to the Future films? I grew up watching you. Thank you so much." Yes, I 100% have heard it. I watched it again a couple of times in preparation for the stream, and I just thought, right, try not to ask him any of those questions. Like, what was it like working with Michael J. Fox? And, you know, I did apologize to him before we began. Like, we were just chatting for like 5 or 10 minutes before we went live. And I said, look, man, it's obviously you've been asked like everything you can possibly ask about Back to the Future for like decades now, and I imagine it's kind of tedious at a certain point. And I apologize if I ask a question that's been asked before, but I'll try and just like, you know, keep it as interesting as I can. And he said, like, don't worry about it, honestly. He said, my rule for people when I'm at cons or whatever is like, if you can ask me a question that I've never been asked before about the movies, then you get 3 more questions that I'll happily answer. And I thought he was talking to me about that. And I was like, okay, I'll do my best. And he's like, no, not you. God, you can just ask what you want. So that put me at ease. But yeah, his song is really good. What's the next one here? Cityware says, was it known Back to the Future was 3 parts when it was for filming the first movie? Also, did you have any idea it would be such a classic? So, again, I can't answer for him. It's my understanding that they didn't know it was going to be a trilogy, although they hadn't planned it out necessarily. And so they wrote the first one as kind of a self-contained movie, but they did want a little hook at the end that would set up a second and a third movie if it was successful enough. So they wanted to leave the door open, but I don't think they had a firm idea in mind for it yet. That's my understanding anyway. And obviously it was a few years before the next one got went into production, so there was a gap. Xavier Savvy Hart says, "Good day, mates. This is one for the both of you. If you can have dinner with 3 people from history, dead or alive, from any point in their lives, who would it be? And second, what's your favorite whiskey?" I honestly would like to know what Tom's favorite whiskey is. For my own part, it's probably Lagavulin, although Highland Park is also pretty damn good. So either of those, I would happily get drunk on that of an evening. As for like people throughout history that I could chat to, man, that is a hell of a range. One of them has got to be Christopher Lee. Like, that man lived the life to end all lives. I mean, he 90 odd years old. He fought in World War II. He recorded like a death metal album. He was in all the Hammer horror movies. Yeah, Christopher Lee. I would love to talk to him. And yeah, I would. Who else would I want? Possibly. Possibly Marlon Brando, just so I could ask him about the island of Dr. Moreau. Because that movie's so shit, and he just clearly gave 0 fucks while making it. I would just love to get his honest take on what it was like and why he even took the role in the first place. Pretty sure it was entirely money, you know? And the third one, it might be Stanley Kubrick, you know? Just I'd be fascinated to know what he thinks about Hollywood now and what it's become compared to like his day. I mean, obviously he passed away in 99, just when Eyes Wide Shut had its like first not premiere, what would you call it? It had done it like its test screening for like the executives at the studio, and he was super happy with it. But yeah, I'd love to know what he thinks of where Hollywood has gone now. But failing that, possibly George Lucas. because again, I would just love to talk to him about Disney and have an honest conversation about, hey, do you regret selling your company and your legacy to this bunch of absolute retards? Next one is Crow Robot says, "Hey Tom, what was your experience doing scenes for Back to the Future the ride? Also, you're looking more handsome than the 85 Biff." Yeah, he's a suave looking gentleman. And he's kept his hair and everything. So, he's a lucky guy. As for the ride, yeah, I don't know what his experience was like doing it, but I do know that the ride had just shut down actually when I went to Universal for the first time. That was in the late 2000s, and I think it got replaced with the Simpsons ride, as I recall. So yeah, I never got to experience it myself. Apparently, it was really cool though. But yeah, it was just a big simulator, really, wasn't it? So you're sat in like a version of the DeLorean. And like your seats just kind of shake around a little bit, and the rest is just like a big screen projecting the simulation for you. But yeah, neat. They still had the DeLorean there, and they had some actor dressed up as Doc Brown that you could talk to. And to be fair, he did put the work in. He was good at interacting with people. Ty Robs says, "Hey Tom, odd question, but what was the manure made of? I have and feed horses, and it looked more like alfalfa cubes than horse manure." I did, I wasn't going to ask him that because he's put that into the questions song. Because the question is like, was it real manure? No, it wasn't. But I did wonder, like, okay, so what the fuck actually was it? Because like it's in his mouth, so it must be something that's safe to consume. Yeah, I don't know. It looks like grass or something with, God knows what's mixed into it. Probably like chocolate cake or something to give it that brown consistency. Yeah, no idea what they actually used on the day. I'm sure he knows though. Wrangler gave $4.20. Thank you. Idiotison says, "Hearing the salty spittoon guy somehow left me more starstruck than Biff. Never connected the two until now." That's pretty cool. Yeah. Kenthis says, "When I moved out of my parents' house, I snuck one thing out of their movie collection, the Back to the Future trilogy." I mean, dude, if you're going to steal something, that's the thing to take, I would say. So good on you. Gate of Marvel said, "As the ultimate take on practical horror effects, what kind of experience was it to film April Fool's Day?" No, I'm sorry, I can't ask him that. Apologies. That's a good question, though. Vinicius says, "Greetings from Brazil. What do you think will be the biggest bomb, Snow White or the Rey Skywalker franchise?" Oh, that is a tough one. I think probably Snow White, but Rey is going to be a close contender because I think the antagonism towards Snow White is so huge that yeah, it's gonna hit it hard. Yeah, the only thing that it might have in its favor is that maybe there's some normies out there who don't know about all the drama and all the controversies surrounding it, and they're just going to go see it because it's like, well, it's a Disney live action remake, it's a Disney film, it's a chance for the next generation to experience Snow White, so they might just see it for that reason. Whereas I think with Rey, it needs the Star Wars fan base to get behind it, and obviously we know where the Star Wars fan base sits with a character like Rey. And that movie will be expensive to make. I mean, I'm sure Snow White was as well, but Rey will be an expensive movie because, it's Star Wars. It's going to need all the special effects. It's going to need battle scenes and all that thing. So, the more I think about it, actually, it might actually end up being the Rey movie that's the bigger flop, just from sheer fan apathy, if nothing else. So, yeah, I think that might be. Graham Robbins says, "Tom, how was it working with Mark Hamill, his recent behavior notwithstanding, and Malcolm McDowell on the Wing Commander 4 as Maniac?" So, yeah, I mean, on the night, Tom described Mark Hamill as being a really nice guy, and he got on well with him. I think maybe they're friends in real life, which is nice. So, yeah, he had good things to say about him. Arm514 Eve says, How was it to make the FMV for the Back to the Future ride? Yeah, we had another question about that. Yeah. Same answer, unfortunately. Scott Inc. says, my 13-year-old boy says that Biff is his favorite character. Says he's misunderstood. It's his favorite series, timeless for many generations. Well, bless your kid for always trying to see the best in people. I think the movie gives you a little, not justification for why he is the way he is, but maybe some kind of insight into his life. Because for some reason, he seems to be living with his grandmother, which either means his parents are dead or they abandoned him or something. So I think you can assume that Biff as a character comes from like a broken home, and that certainly doesn't stand you in good stead for like doing well in life and having a great outlook. Maybe it made him a bitter person. Maybe he had to like fight to get what he has in life. Maybe it just made him angry and he doesn't know how to deal with it. There's all kinds of things you can apply to that character, and it's probably beyond the scope of the movies, but like I just think it's interesting that they made that decision. Like he's living in this fairly unusual situation, and it's a rundown house that he lives in and stuff. Like maybe he didn't have much money growing up. There's all little things you can infer from just little insights like that. So it's not entirely without justification why he is the way he is. Infinity Hand says the nicest people always play the best assholes. That is very true. Very true. E-Man says, question for Mr. Wilson. I'm curious if you have kept any props or costume items from any of your films as keepsakes, and if so, what are some of your most cherished ones from your career? Yeah, we had another question just like that, and I honestly would have loved to have asked him it because it's a pretty cool question, and he must have taken something throughout his career. He must have some things that he got to keep. Yeah, man. Sir Gumby says, good evening, Mr. Drinker. Mr. Wilson, how are you all this fine evening? Well, I was fine on that evening, and I'm fine this evening as well. Thanks, man. What inspired both of you all to get into the world of film and writing? Sincerely, Gumby. So, obviously, I don't know what Tom's motivation was. I can say for myself, I love storytelling. I love that idea of coming up with just a notion, a concept in your head, and have it turned into something that other people can believe in and get invested in and care about. Whether it's like you write a book and then people read it and they get invested in the characters, or whether you turn it into like a comic or a graphic novel or even a movie. All of these different avenues are open for you to explore. And I think there's just something really magical about that. As sappy as it might sound, that we as people can just come up with ideas that don't need to be created. Like we don't need them in order to survive. But we do it because we've got that urge to tell these stories and explore different ideas, and other people can take part in that. I think that's remarkable, and it's something I've always been fascinated with since I was a little kid. And just I don't know, I had that urge to create stuff and tell stories and come up with ideas and explore these different concepts. And fortunately, it's worked out pretty well for me. I've been able to do it, and I've been very lucky in that way. From Tom's point of view, he's done it through the medium of acting. He's a musician. He's a stand-up comedian. Like he's obviously a very creative guy himself. Probably way more than I'll ever be. But he also gets to do that and explore it in different ways. So it's I don't know. You just have that urge. I suppose you have that instinct, and it's your passion. So it's nice to be able to do it. Jesse James says, this is a great interview, very informative, and Tom is the nicest guy ever. Absolutely. And yeah, pleasure to speak to him. Ray Todd says, famous Biff quote from Back to the Future. What are you looking at, butthead? I wish he was here to dispense some quotes. Kyle Guthrie says, drinker, when I was flying to boot camp, Tom was on the same plane as me and the other enlistees. When he found out When he found out about us, he came back and chatted with us for like 30 minutes. Tell him thanks for me. That is a neat story. That's really cool that he did that. Jonathan Jennings says, "Dear Mr. Wilson, what does a producer do, and how many times have you been asked to sing the song?" Yeah, in his song, he was just like, "I don't know what a producer does." I mean, to be fair, they are kind of like a project manager for a movie. Like, if you imagine a movie is just a giant project where you have to organize people to do it. The director is in charge of the actors. The director of photography is in charge of the cameras and actually recording it. And the producer is in charge of just making everything happen. You know, they're in charge of getting the right lighting technician or the right crew in the right places. They're in charge of making sure that all the logistics are in place to make this happen. They liaise with the actors, they liaise with the director, they kind of hold everything together. So yeah, the producer is an important role. Executive producer means absolutely fuck all. They do nothing. Z says, "Hey, it's the Maniac. Love you, man. Have you had Beatles reunions with Mark Hamill and Malcolm McDowell?" I've seen pictures of them at cons together, so I imagine so. Sasquatch says, "Tom, Johnny Carson tuba comedy was great. Thank you. Nice." Watty says, "Biff, oh my soul, this is so cool. Love you, man, but I can't help myself. Please, bro, manure." Thanks in advance, Tom. It is. I love the way he screams that out. You know, when he's crashed his car into the manure truck, he's like spitting it out. I hate manure. Jonathan says, "Nothing but respect to you both. Mr. Wilson, you're positively magnetic here. Have you ever worked or considered doing radio dramas or live shows?" I mean, I know he's obviously done live comedy stand-up and he's done lots of voiceover work. So, yeah, I'm not sure about radio dramas, though. Martin Land says, "Hello, Mr. Wilson. You starred as Major Todd Maniac Marshall in Wing Commander 4. Got any good anecdotes from this production? Props to both of you." Thank you, sir. And yeah, I think he talked about it ultimately on the night. I don't know, in terms of anecdotes and stuff, we didn't really get the chance to get into it. World says, "Hello, Mr. Wilson. What was your favorite version of the Biff from the 3 movies?" Again, I think from what he said, he liked Buford Tannen the most, because it was a more, something a bit different. He got to play it being a cowboy. He practiced all the gun twirling and stuff, and did a really good job with it. Like, I think that was his answer, but I could be wrong on that one. Yeah, I think, as I was saying on the night, I think Griff might be my favorite, just for how batshit crazy he is. I love him. McFly says, "Drinker and Mr. Wilson, which car are you taking home, the DeLorean or the Batmobile?" I mean, the DeLorean can fly and travel through time, and it's a fucking DeLorean, man. I mean, the car itself might be a piece of shit, but man, it looks cool when it's got all the Back to the Future equipment on it. So, yeah, I'd pick the DeLorean every day. High Tech Wizard says, "Love your work, Mr. Wilson. What's your favorite guilty pleasure movie trope?" Unfortunately, he cannot answer that. Fear also says, "Big fan, Mr. Wilson, but tell us about working in Blood in, Blood Out. It's a timeless Chicano classic." Yep, not sure about that there. Excuse me. Daniel Todd says, "Hey, Tom, what's your favorite movie other than Back to the Future?" What is that? "Is that darn cat? You're great as Melvin." Sorry. Yeah, again, unfortunately, he cannot be here to answer that. Dave Breen says, "Is it true that you guys almost hanged Michael J. Fox back in 3? And if so, how did you feel, butthead?" Yeah, I heard there was a bit of a mishap there with that. I don't know how close he came to actually being in danger, but yeah, when you're dealing with ropes around people's necks, like, it is a dangerous occupation, obviously. I mean, I know he had a harness around his body and stuff that would actually hold his weight, but you don't know how much of that is going to take and then how much ultimately gets, put on the rope around the neck. So dangerous stuff. I mean, it looked great on film. So, Michael J. Fox almost dying was totally worth it from my entertainment. Tailslate says, "Is there an 80s iconic teen villains actor club or group, like with William Zabka and others? Did you help each other navigate life and the business? I have no idea if there was, but man, it sounds cool as fuck. Like all these 80s teen villains just all hanging out with each other, like, giving little pep talks and stuff to get through it. Ronan K says, were there some people who could separate reality from fiction and thought that you were an asshole for playing Biff? I think from what he described, not really. Like, it seemed to be like kids and stuff would just get excited to meet him and they would ask him to do the catchphrase and all that. So I'm sure there's the occasional nut job. You always meet them at conventions. But yeah, I think from what he described, it was okay. Daniel John says, Mr. Wilson, you did a fantastic job as Buford in the third movie. He was my favorite in that film. Excellent acting for sure out of the three. Huge bully, but funny. He was, yeah. And I spoke to him about this, how he completely transformed his whole performance, his mannerisms, even just the way he held his face, his posture, everything became a completely different person. And I know that's the whole point of acting, but like to see it just go from one character to another in the same franchise and have it just feel so natural. It's a pretty impressive skill. Nathan Taylor is asking if he has any stories from Action Jackson. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to ask him about that. Immortal Remus says, anyone in the industry that you learned the most from? Again, I don't know, but I'd imagine guys like Michael J. Fox would be quite far up there, just like the impact that he had. Watty says, yo, Thomas. Yo to you, sir. Mark Holloway says, hi, Thomas. One of my favorite roles that you did was working alongside Carrie Eels in Workaholics, where you portrayed millionaires who tried to hunt the main characters of the show. Any fun stories about that role? God, he's worked with everyone. Again, sadly, he's not here to answer the latter part of that question, but appreciate it anyway. Mr. Burns says, I teach a high school film history class and I show Back to the Future to every class as an example of a nearly perfect film. And you're a big reason for that. Awesome, man. That is cool. And that's a very good choice for a perfect movie. Also, consider showing them Tremors for an example of like a perfect screenplay, because that is fucking airtight and it does not waste a second. No J. Spurg says, love you, Tom. Always will. You have the magic that's missing from Hollywood now. Absolutely. It's a shame that he didn't get more, bigger roles, more high-profile roles beyond Back to the Future. Like, I know he's obviously had a very extensive career. A lot of like smaller roles or smaller parts in other productions and stuff. It would have just been great to see him have a chance to really shine in the later part of his career. But it is what it is. And Censor Yetkin says, Back to the Future 1 and 2 were my favorite childhood films. Love from Perth. Now, is that Perth, Scotland or Perth, Australia? I'm going to assume it's Scotland, in which case, much love to you, man. Perth, Australia, not so much. But that right there was the last of the super chats. Obviously, like as I said at the beginning, I can't answer everything. There was questions that were specific to Tom that I just didn't know about, and apologies that we couldn't get through the wall in the night. We just didn't have enough time, and he's obviously a busy man, so I couldn't have him all night just answering questions there. But thank you guys for sending through so many super chats, and I've done my best to answer what I could here. But anyway, that brings me to the end of this little catch-up stream. So that is all I've got for today. Go away now.